We have several hopping in. I'm sure we'll have lots more coming on to the call. I'm going to turn off that chime before we start recording. There we go. So we've got that off. So make sure you check out the chat as we're going, because Erica will be posting some things there from B today and from other events and things that we have going on. Lots going on, mostly in the online space right now, but lots going on. And so I'm going to turn it over to Erica, one of our board members, and she's going to share with us some announcements, and then we'll dive into our call today.
Well, welcome to the May Midday Cafe for the Great Lakes region. We're excited that you could be with us. Virtual is the name of the game. So Hamilton is, you're in the room where it happens, you're in the Zoom where it happens today. And so we're glad you're here. But we're so excited to have Beatrice Chestnut with us. She's already posted a link at the very top of the chat, so don't miss that. I will repost that as she talks about it. But there's also a coupon code you're going to want to snag. So there's actually a way you can save the chat. If you go down in your chat feature right there where it says got everyone, or you could chat privately, there's a little button that has 3 dots in it. At the end of the call, just click save chat and you'll have all that great information we've shared and can use those links to have them for future reference. But we've got some awesome things happening in the Great Lakes region. Much of it has turned to virtual, but that's great because we can still be present together. So I'm going to post Marcy Maderi is hosting from Loughrige, Illinois. She's moved it online, something called Enneagram panels that she does with The Well. And then we've got real life Enneagram circles. Teresa McCloy is the creator of the Real Life Process. And so I work with her in her business, and the real life Enneagram circles are just great collaborative online spaces that you can connect and really learn to use the tool in the work that you do. And so would love for you to check that out. Connie Frecker is hosting an Enneagram workshop online. Actually, she didn't move it online. She moved it to August. And so you'll have some opportunities there with the Enneagram Institute of Ohio. And then Dr. Wagner has actually moved his certified accreditation trainings to 2021. So I'll post a link there as well. And just so you know, those links are not always clickable now as Zoom's upgraded security. So again, you'll want to save the chat so you can copy those and put them into your browser. But I'm going to turn it over to Claire, and she is going to highlight a couple of our events that have switched venues as well. So Claire, go ahead and unmute, and we'll let you share about your training and our upcoming regional conference.
All right, thanks, Erica. And Teresa, I'm sure you're keeping an eye on the waiting room, and so that we can keep letting folks in. And there they are. Here they come. So this is our new reality at the moment, and I love that you said we're in the room where it happens. Right? Everybody unmute and sing that. It's yeah. Anyway, don't. But I just want to say that we're really grateful to have Beatrice today. We want to highlight just a couple of events before we introduce B. For all of you who are waiting to find out if the International Enneagram Association Great Lakes and Minnesota Region Conference is going on, it is going on. And our conference host, Lori Tate, is working diligently to hire the best company to make that platform possible. And all of our board, everyone from our board, will you guys wave? All the things you guys have been doing to get this thing going on. We just so appreciate the work that is happening, so that in July, what are the dates, Erica? July 22 through 24. Is that right? Go on.
24, 25.
24, 25. Maybe you can put that link in the chat bar. So that conference is going on. We have all of our fabulous speakers, Jerome Wagner, Christopher Hewerts, Leslie Hirschberger, Ginger Lapid-Bogda, Debbie Horton. We have workshop teachers that we have some really great ideas on how to make it doable for people in the online setting. So just watch for that. Click on that. In the next probably 5 days, we're going to give you full details of how that's going on. So it's still happening. I'm actually teaching a certification in the Enneagram with the Harmony Model and Ignatian Spirituality, beginning June the 2nd through the 5th, I think, Erica, you can put it in the chat. And we've gone completely online from Canada to Texas, from Virginia to Hawaii and the Netherlands. We have folks coming from all over to that online 4-day training and certification, which is an embodied experience. So you will not be staring at a screen if you're a person that's coming. However, we're just saying you got to register by tomorrow because we're sending out a big package to all of our registrants. So make sure that you do that. And, you know, I think that there are some people you don't really need to introduce in the Enneagram world, but I still want to. I mean, Beatrice has been with the Enneagram world since 2002. And she is a lifelong learner. So while she has her PhD in communications and a clinical psychology degree, she also has studied with the great master teachers and is a master teacher. If you don't have the Bible of the Enneagram instincts, you really want to check out the complete Enneagram 27 Paths to Self-Knowledge. And then what I love as a 3 is this one. So this sits next to my chair when I'm sitting with people in spiritual direction or pastoral work that I do. And I recommend it to all my students in the Enneagram who want to just take a quick look and then maybe do the deep dive. So, so when we think about the work that Beatrice is doing, one of the things that I said to her, and I'm going to try not to get gooey, but I sent her a note last month and I just said, I really do want her regulating voice, that emotional regulating voice for us during a time of isolation in the boxes. And she is present to herself. And so she's able to be present with us. And she is offering online things that, as Erica said, she's putting the coupon code there in the box and the information on it. But I want you to know that you are in really good hands today with Beatrice. And so why don't we just take a moment and take a breath wherever you are, whether you want to stand or sit in a comfortable position. And feel your body in the chair. Your feet on the floor. Gravity is supporting us at the moment. And you can begin to breathe and breathe in gratitude for the moment that gave you the ability to come today. The ability to get online. The ability to get back past some of the Zoom nervousness. And as you breathe now in and down, just be aware of your own presence. And notice how you come today. Without judgment, just notice how you come. And maybe as you notice how you are in this moment, you might be able to name a desire for what these next 50 minutes will bring to you. And you're on mute, so you can name that desire out loud. You might want to write it down. And allow that desire to be an invitation for you to feel your own need in the moment. And with no pressure, not that B needs to meet all of our needs today. But that even that awareness, that's the big work of any good spiritual or psychological journey, is awareness. And so when you feel ready, you can just become aware of the rest of the people here on this call and welcome one another in the ways that you do, maybe a virtual hug. And we'll welcome B in whatever way you'd like to do that. I just want to hold my hands open and say thank you for coming, B. And we just look forward to your presence meeting us here. So will you unmute B?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Claire. Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I guess I have to say right away, I'm just, for some reason, feeling very emotional. As I do more spiritual work with the Enneagram, I find that sometimes I operate as an emotional channel for some reason. And so I guess I'm feeling a lot of gratitude for you and for this group you've created, for the opportunity for all of us to come together in community at this time. And I'm not sure why I'm feeling so emotional, but it's been happening lately when I come together in groups of people like this, people who are really sincerely on a path, really sincerely using the Enneagram for awakening. And I think this is such both a strange time and an opportunity for us all to really observe ourselves in a new way, to be with what's true in a new way, and to really cherish in a very conscious way ourselves for our intentions and the communities that we've created that are really the containers that we need so much right now for using the adversity that we may be feeling as a way of waking up to more of who we are and more of our capacities and more of our inner strength as we do what we do to try to grow to a higher level of awareness.
Well, you named in a very eloquent way what my desire is today, is for us to be with each other in a way that is authentic and healing and safe. And we do record our calls for the YouTube channel. So I want everyone to know that. And just be aware that if things come up for you that feel so tender and private, that you're going to want to make an appointment with a spiritual friend or coach or guide to unpack that. And so be open and receptive to what comes, but know that this is for the wider community as we leave today. And so thank you for channeling that for us and bearing our burdens. Some traditions say, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Tonglen says that we carry it in a very particular way, breathing in someone's difficulty, and just thank you for doing that.
No,
and then breathing out peace or grace, right?
Yeah, it's an honor to be here.
Thank you. So you're going to talk to us about, in these uncertain times, you've already started.
Yes.
And how the arrows and instincts might give us away. I love your word that you use in the class I took called the roadmap, which is available online. It's fabulous for
Enneagram roadmap. Yeah.
And you talk about this being the revolution when you follow the arrows and the instincts with awareness. And so tell us what we can do to stay alive in these moments.
Yes, yes. So I'll talk about the arrows first, and I'll talk a little bit about the wings as well, the wings and the arrows as paths of development. Um, and then maybe talk a little bit about instincts after that. I think one of the things we all think about at a time like this is how do our patterns get played out in ways that maybe are the same as the way they usually do, but also especially the way they might be showing up in different ways because we're under stress. Because this is an unprecedented time, something we've never encountered before. And so it's natural for us to feel pressures of different kinds. And so I think that the wings and the arrows, I see both of them as paths for growth more than anything else. I want to say a little bit about theory, and that is some people have noticed in the complete Enneagram and in some of the things I teach, I don't talk about wings in the same way that they're often talked about. And that's because I don't really see wings as being things that are a set thing for everyone. In other words, you'll hear people say, like, I'm a 2 with a 3 wing, or a 2 with a 1 wing, or a 9 with an 8 wing. And to me, when I hear that, I don't really know what that means exactly. Because for me, the wings do flavor our main type, but in ways that are different for everyone. So I don't see like a 2 with a 3 wing as something where there's a set of characteristics that are true for everyone. I think we all have access to both wings because the circle is really a spectrum. It's a symbol of unity. So there's a way that each of our types are in some ways a function of the tension between the 2 wing types on either side of us. So I do think wings flavor our main type. I think we have similarities that we have access to, but I see those influences as fluid, for instance, often based on history and biography. So I'm a 2, and I have, I have access to types 3 and 1 because they're right next to me. I share characteristics with both. I think by the nature of calling them wings, I think we have to recognize we have both, and we have special access to both. Usually one of them is more prominent than the other. For me, I have a brother and a father who are both 1s. So doesn't it make sense that I would be kind of 1-ish, because my whole life I was fighting with my social 1 brother and trying to get the approval of my social 1 father. So all I want to say about wings is that I don't see them as clarifying, for instance, in a concrete way, the difference. And I think what happened is, I think actually subtypes are a much better way of describing the difference between people of the same type, right? So if you're a 3, and you look different than your friend who's a 3, I think it's probably more likely that you have a different subtype than that one of you has a 2 wing, for instance, and the other has a 4 wing. I don't think that clarifies very much. Now, having said that theoretical part, I would say that wings are growth opportunities. So in other words, if you notice, identifying with an Enneagram type is a way of, by definition, staying stuck in one perspective among 9, right? We've often hear that the Enneagram is a map of wholeness. The circle symbolizes unity of different perspectives. But when we identify with a type, and especially when we're under stress, in some ways our fixated perspective of our type becomes even stronger and harder to break out of.
Anybody fixated right now? Would you like to give a thumbs up?
Yes. Yeah, so let's say that's the first thing that happens to us that we might notice. And one of the things I want to say about this moment in time is, I think more than anything else, it's a call to observe ourselves even more than we have before. I think all of us who are dedicated to the Enneagram work know that self-observation is the number 1 method. The Enneagram gives us a guide to what to pay attention to, but if we're observing ourselves, and I mean in a very explicit way, like being there's what we do in our inner work retreats. We do an exercise where we have people walk around for 15 minutes just outdoors or wherever they want, being aware of their left hand the whole time, right? So that's a self-observation practice where you're really tuning into yourself in a new way, right? And Dr. David Daniels, one of my teachers, used to always say, self-remembering never becomes habitual, right? We need to continually remind ourselves to self-observe because we're always falling asleep, right? And being fixated on our type is one way of falling asleep. And so if we're using this time, and again, I think that the strangeness of this time is in some ways to put us up against a kind of opportunity, a kind of pressure to really observe what's true in us, to really observe what we're doing. And one of the ways to do that is to really notice, how are you even more locked into your type? How are you really doing what you do even more than normal? I know me as a 2, I am sort of even more heightened to the issues that are happening for me in relationships right now. I happen to be living alone, and I've never spent this much time alone. And of course, if you're a 2 on the path, you know being alone is a very good thing for us, but this is a lot of alone. And so I'm really aware of my relationships right now, both the good and the bad, you know, the ways that people are reaching out to me and how deeply I appreciate that. The ways that, you know, people are maybe inadvertently hurting me and how big that feels. So I think, first of all, observing our main type is very important. Next, I think we can observe how are my wing types showing up right now? And again, especially, how can I lean into one or the other as a way of not being so fixated in my main point? When I was learning in my typing, when I was going through my typing certification, my teacher certification in the narrative tradition, I remember I had a coach who noticed that when I was doing typing interviews, I was paying too much attention to creating rapport with people and not enough attention to the task at hand, which was getting the type. And she said, can you lean into your 3 wing? And when she said, it was like it had never occurred to me that that was an option. But when I made that conscious, it changed everything. I mean, something that simple. So we call the path of the wings, or leaning into the wings to expand out of the fixated perspective of your main type. We call that the path of evolution because it's a more gentle movement. But then we call the arrow line movements the path of revolution. Every point is connected to 2 other points, and these arrow line points are very important access points for our development. Now, similar to the wings and similar to being fixated in your main type, it'll be good for you to notice at this time of this global pandemic, to notice, where am I sliding in these arrow lines? Now, in the past, we called the arrow against the security point and the arrow with, so the arrow pointing from your type to, I call that to another point, the arrow with, the stress point. One term that and when I say we, it's me and my business partner, Uranio Pius, who I teach with most of the time these days. Uranio and I really disagree with the term disintegration that's sometimes been used for the arrow with. And the main reason for that is although the arrow with can be a stressful point, and you may really be noticing that you're going to that point right now, and maybe acting like, you know, I'm a 2, maybe acting like an 8, you know, if you're a 3, maybe you're acting like a 9 somehow. If you're a 4, you're acting like a 2. These stress points can be ways of really acting out in an unconscious way, almost like a pressure release valve, some of the low traits of that type. So the idea is when we go to those, when we slide to either of those points, and we can go to either one of them in stress. I really want to stress that. We can go to either point in stress. Sometimes going to what's been called the security point is actually, I think of it as almost like trying to find a security blanket to hold on to, like in a time of stress. It's a little bit of a regression to the past, going against the arrow. I really love the work that Sandra Maitre and A.H. Almas have done on the arrow line movements. If you really want a beautiful description of what I think is the best way to understand the arrow line movements, I have some of it in my book, The Complete Enneagram, but Sandra Maitre in her book, The Spiritual Enneagram, has a beautiful account of how those arrow line movements happen. But I think when we're unconscious, when we're stressed, when we're under pressure, like many of us are right now, we slide to those points, and you can really go to either one. Now, the reason why we don't use the word disintegration for the stress point is while that movement can be stressful, it's also the point of spiritual growth. And I think when we use the word disintegration, we think of it as only a bad thing. And if you can meet the defensiveness, the stress that comes up when you move to that point, it's really the biggest opening you have to higher level spiritual awareness, right? It's the antidote for your main type in an amazing way. Now, both points are antidotes for your main type. They're both balancing, natural balancing points. So the first job is to be aware of how you might be sliding to either one of those points. And again, it's all about self-observation. Notice, like for me as a 2, how am I going to 4 right now? And believe me, I'm going to 4 a lot right now. As you can see, maybe being in touch with authentic emotion, which is one of the gifts of 4, happens for me often, whether I want it to happen or not. But it's part of the truth of what feels like I'm living right now, is being more in my emotions in a deeper way, which I see as a gift, really, and the gift that 4s model for us all the time. So how are you going to that point against the arrow? And how are you going to the point with the arrow? Now, the first job is just noticing what's happening, probably unconsciously, or under pressure or stress. But the next thing to notice is how you can shift what you're doing at those arrow points with conscious awareness. Now, when we use these arrow line points consciously and intentionally, going to the high side of those points, they create unbelievable radical shifts in awareness for us, because they're the perfect antidotes for our main type in 2 different ways. And here's the important thing. According to the way we work with them and the way we've been working with them for a long time now, and what we think is most effective by far, is working with the arrow against first. So the arrow that's been called the security point, you need to work on that first. One of the reasons why you may be going to your stress point, the arrow moving away from your main type, is that you haven't developed enough your arrow, the security point, the arrow against, the arrow that's pointing to your main type. Now, what we find is when people just go to their stress point, even with effort in a conscious way, the change you might make there is not sustainable unless you first integrated the high side qualities of your security point, or the arrow against. Now, this is a really important point. The Enneagram is a little bit like a time machine. And again, remember, when we're talking about the arrows, what we're talking about here is the Enneagram needs to be seen as being in motion. Instead of a circle, it's actually a sphere. The inner triangle is not just a triangle. If we see it in 3 dimensions, which the Enneagram is really meant to be understood in, it's the Merkaba. It's the Seal of Solomon. The Merkaba is 2 interlocking pyramids, each spinning in different directions. And in the mystical Jewish tradition, it's a vehicle of light to take us to a higher level of consciousness. So this is embedded in the Enneagram. So we also need to recognize that when we go against the arrow, we're going back in time. It's often we revisit aspects of ourselves that we had to leave behind because they didn't work in our early environment. So just using myself as a quick example, I'm a 2. And when I was younger in my childhood, it didn't really work for me to be emotional. There was no space for my emotions. My mother was very emotional. She was also a 2. And it didn't work. My emotions were not supported. They weren't seen. They weren't accepted. So I had no way of being in touch with my own emotions in a healthy way. So I repressed a lot of emotion, right? So the 4 in me being more in touch with my needs and my feelings, the way healthy fours are, didn't really work. And so one really big piece of work for me is reintegrating a healthy four qualities. And I did that for many years in therapy, but I'm still doing it at some points now, especially right now. So for twos, for instance, really getting in touch with the value of your emotions. Sometimes us twos, when we start feeling emotional, we feel like a little embarrassed, like, we shouldn't be emotional. We should, have a certain image. It looks like a breakdown, or we've been told we're too sensitive, but really it's really important to get in touch with the arrow against and those high side qualities. And you can see for two, it's a natural balancing point, because it balances out not being in touch with your needs as a two to being more in touch with your needs. Maybe sometimes repressing emotions to welcoming emotions. And I mean, fours are beautiful in the way that they stand up for authentic emotions are automatically valid, and they should be shared authentically. And that's a good thing. So all of these things have been really good for me to understand. So then once as a two, I'm able to sort of take in that natural balancing point. That gives me a lot more inner stability to make the trip to 8, which is another kind of antidote for two, right? It helps us twos who can sometimes have a hard time being direct, being in our full power, at least me as a self-preservation two. It helps us be more direct. It helps us be more shapeshift less. With 8, sort of what you see is what you get in a good way. So twos, we can sort of become whoever you need us to be. And sometimes then we lose our sense of self, like who are we really? So 8 helps us recognize, no, this is who we are. It's good to be straightforward about that. It helps us access anger in a healthy way, in a constructive way, to actually make relationships better through having healthy conflict. That's what 8s are really good at, healthy 8s. And it helps us step into our authority in a way that's more balanced, that's not necessarily about needing to get recognition or about pride, but just about expressing who we are and moving things forward and seeing the big picture and what might need to happen and what we can bring to the world.
So maybe we can take a breath with that.
Yeah, let's stop there.
Just noticing where you slide, and you can access the high side or the low side of either one, and noticing what's happening. So as a 3, there are some days I am so 9.
Yeah.
I might not get up till noon.
Yes.
And so, I mean, not up, because of course my inner 3 does wake me up and remind me that I need to get on the computer, but I mean, out of my bed and into clothes. And I did wonder, if you could say just a little something about the instincts here, because our original conversation started with, so B, tell us what it's like for everybody to have self-pres on top right now.
Right.
And you said, oh yeah, but the social thing could be on top right now too. So can you say a little bit about that?
Yes. First of all, similar to our type, whatever our main instinct is, our dominant instinct is likely to be intensified right now. And so it's important to just notice that, if you're self-preservation, certainly. I know for me, it's about like finding the exact perfect time to go to the grocery store where there's not a line, right? So for me, I don't like standing in line, but I need to get the stuff. So whatever it is for you, noticing how that may be accentuated right now. Notice how it may be intensified. And again, the first thing is noticing with a lot of compassion for yourself. So no judgment if you're noticing your instincts going a little bit wild right now. And so the second thing is I have some social dominant friends, and I see that happening a lot too. Like one of my social dominant friends sending me a lot of news, links to news articles about different leadership failures around the world that are hurting people. Different ways that people aren't dealing with the crisis so that more people are dying. Different ways that people are coming together to face the crisis. I mean, certainly watching acts of heroism, you know, healthcare workers. This is a way that we're kind of, I think, looking at things happening in society in both really troubling ways, but also really heroic ways. And the social instinct can help us see that and how that is coming out in us more than it may usually, whether we're social dominant or not. But again, it can, I have one friend who's gotten a little bit obsessed with news articles about this and what's happening. And it's hard because a lot of us can't do anything about this, especially, you know, staying at home. We can't maybe do what we would normally do in order to take action in the world. And so it can be very frustrating for social dominants to not be able to come together in different ways to take action, and to, especially with so much suffering going on in different ways. And worrying about, you know, the global economy, national economies, local economies. There's a lot to be worried about right now. I think it's like I said, I did a blog on the pandemic a few weeks ago. And one of the things I said is it's a little bit different. It's not as obvious to see the way the sexual or one-to-one instinct might be kind of heightened right now. But certainly I've seen some of my sexual dominant friends getting a little bit more focused on their core people, you know, who are the most important people. You know, it's a little bit like, you know, get the lifeboats out right now. Who are you bonded with that helps you feel safe right now? And getting maybe even a little bit more focused on those people, or getting more worried about those relationships, or getting sort of focused on those in ways that are unhealthy and healthy. So again, I think the main thing is noticing how is your instinct activated right now, and how can you observe what's happening in a way to both have compassion for yourself and understand your response to what's happening, but also take a breath and take care of yourself such that you can relax that instinctual response a little bit more. You know, when do you need to take a walk? When do you need to talk to someone, you know, to have them talk you out of your self-preservation fears? When can you just take a moment to just breathe and relax and recognize this is your animal wisdom, but it may be working overtime right now because you are under threat. There are things that will activate your instincts right now in a totally different way than normal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there is a way to look at the instincts, and some call it stacking. We won't get into all that. You can, in fact, did you talk about that in your blog a little bit? And can we get that link so folks can read it?
Yeah, so the blog, you can also find the blog at cpenneagram.com, which is, and also on my personal website, beatricechestnut.com. And I didn't talk too much about the sequences, and we call them sequences, just the order, what's in the first place, what's in the second place, what's repressed. But sometimes, and sometimes the sequence, you can really see that heightened, right? And what your repressed instinct might be even more repressed right now. And we call it repressed only because these are biological drives. They're very powerful. And to have one as a blind spot, it means it's a little more than a blind spot. We actually have to keep it out of awareness. And they're for self-preservation repressed people right now, for instance, they may not be taking care of themselves as much as they need to. Now, it could be that their self-preservation is showing up more than usual under these conditions, or it may be just as repressed as it always is, and they may be missing opportunities that they need to pay attention to take care of themselves more. So the main thing is to observe what's happening. You know, is the second one, maybe if the second one is self-preservation, maybe that's coming up really big. And we believe that through your lifetime, we don't really change our sequence completely. However, they do come more into balance. And you do get, the instincts do operate more as needed, you know, to serve survival. When we're in personality, part of what happens to the instincts is they get distorted by the passion of the type. And so they kind of operate in a distorted way, not just according to how their healthy functioning might flow. If we were just in touch with what we needed to do when, based on what was actually happening out there in the world, as opposed to through the subjective viewpoint of our personality.
Mm-hmm. And that word sequencing, I think, helps many people. Even as you said, wings flavor, the instincts, they're all biological. And so we need all of them, and they are sequential throughout our lives. And that as we're healthier and more aware, we're more balanced. And I wonder, I wonder if anybody has a question for you. Even in what you've covered already, I think when I was in the grocery store the other day, and I ran into an old friend who had a mask on. I had a mask on at Meijer, and she said, I'm only wearing this for other people. And I said, well, yeah, this is, we're loving our neighbor as ourselves. And this is why we're doing this. And then she told me about another mutual friend of ours who's doing the shipped work. And that they didn't have a mask on, and felt real desire to hug this other person. And so so in my other part of my life, I'm a pastor, and so I have a congregation that is full of maskers and non-maskers.
Interesting.
Let's go back and get, and go to church and go to work, and the other ones that are saying not until there's a vaccine. So, I wonder how instincts might play out with that, and certainly counter types and things like that. Do you have anything you'd like to offer?
Yeah, I definitely think that whatever your dominant instinct is has a lot to do with, like, whether you're focused on, for instance, like not transmitting the disease to others, or you might be focused on someone in your family not getting it, or you not getting it. There may be fear about, like, what if I get sick? Other people may be more focused on the economic collapse that's happening right now, the people that are out of work. I know for me, sometimes when I walk around my neighborhood, I just feel really sad. And it feels like a feeling of feeling the pain of all the businesses that are closed right now. And so different people may be focused on different aspects. And then, like you're saying, you may have this divide where some people are really focused on, let's, lock down so we can control this virus, maybe taking action as they can to promote testing or promote education or making everyone wear a mask. Other people may be much more focused on, we've got to reopen as soon as possible, worrying about their business or a friend's business or someone they care about, or about the economy as a whole, what's going to happen to their, to their investment, in their savings account. So I think the main thing is for us to have a lot of compassion for ourselves and for others, and to not judge, because again, when our instincts are working overtime, we're a little bit at the lower side of our functioning. The subtype is descriptive of a less self-aware level, because it is so influenced by our main instincts and the way they get activated when we're under threat, and our lower emotional center, which is the passion. And so it's like noticing how you may be contracting, noticing how you may be fearful of different things.
Can you say that again? Contracting.
Contracting.
Really,
contracting in fear, or contracting in the need to survive or take care of yourself, or to even like contract against all the big emotions you might be having about different things that are going on right now. People who have lost people. I think there's so much going on, and part of it is to really be clear about what's true for you, and how can you observe what's true and interpret it in a way that is a lot about self-understanding and self-acceptance and taking care of yourself.
Yeah. And taking care of your neighbor,
and taking care of your neighbor. Yes. And we're really, I think, seeing in some ways the tension between self-preservation and social instinct. But again, if we can balance those out, and recognize that they're both, they can both be healthy responses if they're not overdone or if they're not, combined with too much fear, bringing in more love, bringing in more acceptance, more empathy for others is going to be very important right now.
Yeah. And one of our questions here from Amanda is, can you explain a little more about the sexual one-to-one subtype and how it might be activated right now?
Yeah, as I said, it can be, for the sexual instinct, sometimes it's a lot about fusion, a lot about merger with important others. And so it can sometimes be like the other person is everything, my partner is everything, so there could be even heightened fear about what's going on with my partner, are they going to be okay? So it might be someone who's more afraid of their partner getting sick or losing their job than themselves. It may be more intense need for connection with that person. Now, what's good for sexual dominance is to spread out their needs for relationship to other people, right? So to recognize maybe you don't need to get everything from that one person. It's good to have friends. It's good to, sort of the social instinct is more about friendship, and so it's good to need more people than just that one person, or focus on more people than just that one person. And sometimes it can look a little bit like that, like too much heightened concern for that special person, or maybe a few special people that you're particularly merged with. And how can you sort of, again, relax into not being so fearful about what will happen to them or what's happening in the relationship, but to kind of calm yourself and reassure yourself that, in positive ways, that the connection is there, but also to have more support for more mutual supportive relationships with more people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So take a breath with that, all of our one-to-ones and those who love them, right?
Yes.
We have a question from Stephanie. She says, do you think heightened instincts could also be an opportunity for healing, like moving on the lines? As a self-pres 4, I'm noticing how the heightening self-pres everywhere might be using up the energy and therefore opening me more fully to the emotions or my feelings.
Yes. I mean, self-preservation 4s are interesting types because they can not go into their feelings so much because they work really hard. They endure a lot. Right. And so they may be going into action a lot. Self-preservation 4s go into action to get what they need, or to endure difficult situations, to prove themselves. They may be making Herculean efforts on behalf of themselves and others. And it's actually really good for self-preservation 4s to feel their feelings right now. To notice the instinctual response, but not get taken away by it, but allow themselves to actually, exactly like this person's saying, get in touch with the emotions. And here's what's important for self-preservation 4s, to share their feelings with others.
That is.
As often they keep them in.
Hmm.
Or don't share them with many.
Yeah. So let's see. Can you, Erica, help the raised hand here?
Yes, it's me. My name is
Hello. Welcome.
Hello, yeah, welcome. I am from Egypt. I'm
Oh.
very proud to see you, all of you. Thank you, Pia. This is the second time to see you here in Cairo in conference. I'm very happy to see you again. Thank you from my deep heart. You touched my heart in the beginning when you tears too. As we will always see you very emotional. Really, I'm very happy. You inspire me a lot of time. I'm proud to listen to you. I need a lot of like that lecture. Really, I need it very much. I'm very happy to see you again, and thank you for the organizer. That's very happy to listen to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Good to see you.
What time is it in Egypt right now?
The time now is 7 o'clock, and I'm Muslim, and I need to fast. I need to eat now, but I don't care. I'm very interested to listen.
Thank you for joining us from Egypt.
Yes, every time I welcome. I need to attend everything you see. I can attend with you, really.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. So this is from Mary Solomon. It might be bigger than we can conquer here in just a minute, but can you see it in the chat there? B, my question is regarding countertypes. My first is self-pres. My second is social, which is the countertype. Can a countertype be in a number one position? What does leading from or having secondary position of a countertype mean? And what does utilizing countertype signify? What it signifies is everybody needs to take B's class called the Enneagram Roadmap, because she goes over these things in that class.
Yes.
Can you do it in maybe a Cliff Notes kind of way?
I can say a thing. Yeah, she's a 9. So the social 9 is the countertype of 9s. She's saying that's her second, I believe. And social 9s, actually, the path of 9s is to be leaders, and social 9s are particularly good leaders. They often get drafted into it. And the countertype, of course, just to define it for people, it's the one of the 3 subtypes of a particular type that goes against the flow of the passion. So the passion of the 9 is sloth. So the 9s out there should definitely be looking at sloth and how they might make themselves unimportant right now, because sloth is not about laziness. It's about sort of a psycho-spiritual laziness to being tuned in with your own deeper sense of being. If you're a 9, not making yourself important, not putting yourself in the picture. And I think that the countertype is something always to be aware of, because each of the countertypes is a type that it doesn't look like the main type. It doesn't look like what you think it would be. And I would say, I think 9's path of development often leads for them into them being more in leadership roles, and social 9s in particular, but self-preservation 9s as well. And so I would say, yeah, if you're a countertype, you have something additional to watch right now, because your type doesn't show up the way people sometimes think it would. I'm not hearing you, Claire. I don't. I can't hear you.
I'm not sure what happened to
That's
your,
weird.
you look like you're unmuted. I had this happen to somebody the other day. You look like you're unmuted, but
Yeah.
there you
There she
are.
is. Now I can hear you.
So,
Now I can hear you.
now you're good.
Okay. So Beatrice, can you take a trip around the 9? You don't have to say anything about it, but can you say the countertype for each?
Sure, sure.
Be great.
So for 8, it's social. The social 8 is the countertype. For 9, it's the social 9. For 1, it's the sexual 1. For 2, it's the self-preservation 2. For 3, it's the self-preservation 3. For 4, it's the self-preservation 4. For 5, it's the sexual 5. For 6, it's the sexual 6. And for 7, it's the social 7. And social 7s are very interesting types. So if you don't know what a social 7 is, it's a 7 that doesn't look like a 7. So, but all of them they're not what you'd think. Like the counterphobic 6 of the 6, it's a sexual 6, goes against fear with strength, doesn't look afraid at all. But the passion is still there. It's a bit disguised.
So there you go. Now you know why you have all the problems you have. All of us that are countertypes.
Yeah, the countertype, I find that to be a really important element of the subtype system that you don't hear all the time. So I do like to emphasize that there are these countertypes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what that says to us here, even as we head to the top of the hour, is that you are more than your type. And you are more than your personality. You're more than your ego. You know, you are invited through this kind of work to discover the beauty, the essence, the authentic you, the beauty of who you are. And you know, I think even my first note to you, B, was right after my mom passed, and I said, you know, this is a time to do really good inner work. And you know, I could, as a 3, I could be, if this wasn't isolation time, I might not be paying attention to some of the things that I'm paying attention to. And so, friends, I just want to say to all of us, we're really brave people to be on a call like this and to say, you know, I want to have an evolution or revolution. I want to be centered. I want to be grounded. I want to be kind to myself. I want to notice without judgment. Whatever words seem to emerge for you today during this talk, you know, stay with that. Write those things down and stay with it and let your awareness continue. One of the things that I love that you say, B, is that Gurdjieff would say, you know, don't try to change something, just be aware and stay with that. That's the really important work here. And maybe you can even just say something about that in our closing remarks here, about awareness and not trying to leave this space and fix your arrows or your wings or your instincts. No fixing, but awareness and noticing without judgment.
Yeah, I just think it's, I think one of the gifts of this time is that it's an important time for inner work. I think when all of us individually rededicate ourselves to our inner work and take the opportunity of whatever adversity or time that we have available to us to do more inner work. I know I'm doing a lot of new things now in this time than I was doing before. I think that helps us all on a collective level. It helps us come together, I think, in a larger way, in a way that we're going to have to right now, because we won't survive if more people aren't doing inner work. And everyone here who's doing their inner work is like a beacon of light to the people around them. And it has a big effect. So I would just say, exactly like you're saying, use this time for self-observation, use this time to deepen your inner work, rededicate yourself with a lot of awareness of what's happening without a sense that there's anything wrong, but that it's just about understanding the truth of who you are and who you can be.
So in this closing moment, we're going to do a little bit of heart math, okay? We're going to take the virtue of our style and breathe that in, you know, I'll just name it around the circle in a way that may or may not fit. You can use another word if it doesn't fit. But breathing in strength, if you're an 8, right in and around your heart space. They say that, you know, negative thoughts are like, they're like Velcro, and positive thoughts are like Teflon. So we need about 11 to 17 seconds to let the goodness just be breathed in right around our heart space. So for 8s, just be breathing in strength. And 9s, peace. And 1s, goodness. And 2s, love. 3s, effectiveness, connectedness. 4s, authenticity, creativity. 5s, wisdom. 6s, faithfulness. 7s, joy. Or whatever word is enlivened for you around your dominant style. Just breathe that in for about 11 to 17 seconds. You can even put your hand on your heart if you like. The truth of who you are, beauty of who you are. You're more than your characteristics. And so let's just say goodbye to one another with a blessing in some way. And until next month, or when we meet again online in another virtual spot that's been offered in the chat line. Bless you all.
Thank you.